Happy Monday. Hope everybody's having a good day and had a good weekend. For those of you who are close to me, you know that I had some sad news that my Nana passed away on Saturday. And so I was dealing with that over the weekend. But I do know that she truly is in a better place. So I'm just a little sad about it. But I do appreciate everybody who offered me condolences and prayers for our family. And while we may not be blood-related family, we were still family. And I do appreciate it. And I reached out to some of her family members that I grew up with, but we just don't talk anymore. And offer them my condolences since they actually are blood-related family. And I just wanted them to know, that I was praying for them to get through this difficult time. So there's just a couple things that I want to talk about. And the first thing I'm going to look at, I watched a interview that Elijah Schaffer did with a journalist named Lara Logan. And I'd never heard of her before. She's been a journalist, I think she said, for like 35 years. And she's kind of been like blacklisted, even from Newsweek. I mean, was it Newsweek or Newsmax? It might have been Newsweek. One of those newses. And they kind of just don't use her in any segments anymore. But some of the stuff that she is covering is very interesting. And Project Veritas, I believe, is kind of in the middle of the same type of investigation. So I do suggest to go watch that interview with Elijah Schaffer because it's very interesting. But Project Veritas got in touch with a whistleblower from the HHS, Health and Human Services? Yeah. And they exposed the HHS's complicity in child trafficking at the southern border. And one thing that Lara Logan mentioned as well that are involved in child trafficking is CPS. They have people that are involved in that as well. So I wanted to take a look at this. It says that a federal government whistleblower working for the Council of the Inspector General on Integrity and Efficiency, or CIGIE, has worked with Project Veritas on a 9-month investigation into the U.S. Department associated with Health and Human Services and its participation in human trafficking. Now, there's a YouTube video that you can go watch. I'll link it in the description below. The whistleblower, Tara Lee Rodas, talked with Project Veritas founder James O'Keefe in the following video to describe what shocking investigation revealed. Rodas volunteered last year to help HHS using the placement of unaccompanied minors entering in the U.S., plus was sent to work at an intake site in California. What the daring whistleblower witnessed next was obviously a disturbing network of vulnerable children being flown straight to human traffickers using United States tax dollars. Project Veritas journalist adopted up on leads provided by Rodas and was able to talk with several children, one of them telling the reporter she was being, quote-unquote, pimped for sex. The 16-year-old gal made it clear she didn't like being forced to have sex with many men. The woman who trafficked the girl claimed to be her aunt who knew her as a child, but the girl stated she didn't know her. The sponsors of the illegal immigrant children can also use deportation as a threat for making them obey their instructions, according to the federal government whistleblower. Let's see.
The tax dollars of people who are listening are paying to put children in the hands of criminals. I said, I need to make you aware. And they said, Tara, we don't get sued by traffickers.
A government whistleblower has stepped forward to Project Veritas to detail her harrowing experience at the Department of Health and Human Services. In 2021, this whistleblower volunteered to assist HHS with the placement of unaccompanied minors and was deployed to the Migrant Emergency Intake Site in Pomona, California. There, she witnessed the agency failing these children, as she puts it, doing the work of the cartels on your tax dollars.
These vulnerable children, we care for them, we clothe them, we feed them with your dollars and my dollars. We fly that product directly to the trafficker. God forbid it's sex trafficking.
Project Veritas embarked on a 9-month investigation across the country to corroborate our whistleblower's claims.
So he attempted to traffic children, and he's still at address in Texas.
Yes. We have 44 unaccompanied children at that address. We have 25 unaccompanied children at that address.
Project Veritas put boots on the ground, visiting scores of addresses the whistleblower shared from case files she worked on. What we found was shocking.
¿Quién te patrocinó a ti?
La tía, pero me corrió en la casa. Ella me ofrecía, y a mí no me gustaba eso.
¿Te ofrecía qué?
Me ofrecía con los hombres, pues.
Pero ella, ¿cuántos hombres ella te obligó a estar con cuántos hombres?
Bueno, con muchos, ni puedo. Porque no me gustaba lo que me decía, me obligaba.
¿Ella de verdad era tu tía o fue alguien que se...
Porque ella me conocía desde chiquita, pero yo no la conocía.
The sponsor can hold up that order of deportation to that child and say, if you do not do what I say, I'm going to call ICE on you myself.
Me ayudó, nada más que yo me escapé ahí en la noche, ella llamó la migración.
I don't believe that this is something that HHS wants people to know. If you're a case manager and you know this information, if you really care about the children being safe, you need to come forward.
She said, God forbid it's sex trafficking. Well, what other kind of trafficking does she think they're doing with these children? And I would like to know, I understand she's coming forward, but how long was she doing this before she came forward? How long was she complicit and didn't speak up? How many children did she put directly into the human traffickers' hands before she realized she was doing something wrong? And I wouldn't say realize, because you always know that that's wrong. Come on. In April of 2021, Alex Jones went viral for a movie of him trying to quit children from being smuggled into America. I don't know who wrote this. The grammar's awful. Despite the video evidence displaying Jones attempting to call the particular authorities and physically block a vehicle transporting minors, fact-check sites like Snopes claimed to debunk the video at the time. And there was another one here from News Wars. I was just looking to see if there's any extra information, but it looks like it's just the same thing. So yeah. So that's what's going on with our tax dollars. And I mean, look, I think we know that our government is very corrupt and that they do things that they shouldn't, and you know, it's probably really, really bad. And so this should shock and surprise us, but it does not shock or surprise me that this is going on in our government. It just doesn't. So, go check out Project Veritas if you want to look up. Like I said, I'll link the description for that YouTube video in the description box. And also, I'll find the interview with Elijah and Lara Logan, and I'll link that in the description as well. So the only other thing I want to talk about, also, I want to say really quickly, the last video I put out last week, it was like a 27-minute video compared to the like 45-minute videos I normally do. And it got so many plays. And so I'm trying to do it where I do less than 30 minutes now, because I understand most people like condensed information and not the long format. That most people aren't like me. I prefer long format. Most people want it quick and condensed. So that's what I'm going to do. So from the Daily Wire, we all know that our government got Brittany Griner back. We traded her for the Merchant of Death, you know, a convicted terrorist, basically, the gun runner. He was sentenced to, I think it was 25 years. And we traded him out, you know, someone who is convicted of trying to kill Americans for a basketball player. Simply for the fact that she's black, she's gay, and she's a woman. That's the only reason. Now, there is another person, there's more people over in Russia, obviously, but there was another person, Paul Whelan, who's been there for 4 years in prison. They said that he was a spy, so he's been in prison for 4 years. Now, we were told by the Biden administration that Russia said it's Brittany Griner or no one. And supposedly that wasn't true, that they actually said you could have Paul Whelan, Brittany Griner, and if you don't choose one of those two, then it's no one. And they went with Brittany Griner, and then they lied about it. And this is how we know they lied about it. NBC issues correction, changing story to match White House spin on Griner swap by Virginia Crutta. So NBC published a bombshell story alleging that Russian officials initially offered the Biden admin the choice between WNBA star Brittany Griner and Marine veteran Paul Whelan in Thursday's prisoner swap, but then issued a correction after the White House told a different story. Outkick's David Hookstead shared screenshots of both the original story and the edited version, explaining, quote, NBC had a bombshell report that Russia offered American Brittany Griner or Paul Whelan, citing a senior government official. It would be Biden's choice which one to save. The report was later edited without explanation to mirror Biden's explanation that only Griner was offered. Excuse me, I just yawned. So here is, we're going to open this up so we can see the original. So, here it is. But the official said Russia has threatened treated Whelan differently because he is an accused spy, and that the Kremlin gave the White House the choice of either Griner or Whelan or none. Now, that's the original. And then they corrected it. Now it says, because he is accused of spying, and that the Kremlin ultimately gave the White House the choice of Griner or no one after different options were proposed. There you go. Both the original and the edited stories noted that Russia was willing to make a trade for convicted international arms dealer Victor Bout, who has served 11 years of his 25-year sentence. Quote, but the official said Russia has treated Whelan differently because he is an accused spy, and that the Kremlin gave the White House the choice of either Griner or Whelan or none. The text of the original story read. Okay, we already read the corrected copy. The article included a correction adding, quote, an earlier version of this article misstated the choice the Biden admin was given over hostages. It was to swap for Griner or no one, not a choice between Griner or Whelan. The revised copy mirrored the White House's claims almost exactly. After Press Secretary Karen Jean-Pierre highlighted all the reasons it was great that Griner was coming home, namely that she was, quote, more than an athlete, more than an Olympian, she is an important role model and inspiration to millions of Americans, particularly the LGBTQI plus Americans and women of color. Unfortunately, the choice became to either bring Brittany home or no one. Let's watch how stupid she is.
While we're celebrating Brittany's return home today, we have also continued to be in touch with the Whelan family, for whom this news brings mixed emotions. In recent weeks, it became clear that while Russians were willing to reach an agreement to secure Brittany's release, they continued to treat Paul Whelan differently given the nature of the totally illegitimate charges they have levied against Paul. Unfortunately, the choice became to either bring Brittany home or no one. As the president said this morning, he will never stop working to secure Paul's release and return home, and he will not give up. On a personal note, Brittany is more than an athlete, more than an Olympian. She is an important role model and inspiration to millions of Americans, particularly the LGBTQI plus Americans and women of color. She should never have been detained by Russia. And I am deeply proud of the work that the president has done, this administration has done, to get her home.
Okay. God, she's such a moron. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton cast additional doubt on the Biden admin's claim when he said that the Kremlin had previously offered Whelan as part of a one-for-one swap for Bout. He explained at the time that then-President Donald Trump had turned down the deal and excoriated Biden for taking it. Quote, the possibility of a Bout for Whelan trade existed back then, and it wasn't made, for very good reasons having to do with Victor Bout, Bolton said during a CBS interview, adding that he saw the final deal, Bout for Griner, as a very bad mistake. Quote, this is not a deal, this is not a swap, this is a surrender. And terrorist and rogue states all around the world will take note of this, and it endangers other Americans in the future who can be grabbed and used as bargaining chips by people who don't have the same morals and scruples that we do. There are occasions when you swap spies. Obviously, there are legitimate exchanges of prisoners of war, but that this doesn't even approximate that. The idea that somehow that Brittany Griner did, very foolishly in my estimate, but that whatever she did compares to Victor Bout is something that shows just how desperate the administration was to make this deal. And I'm just very worried about the effect it has and the danger that it can put many other Americans in all around the world. So, that's that. Yeah, usually when you do a prisoner swap, it's kind of like an even trade type of thing. And look, I don't have any sympathy for Brittany Griner. She plays basketball in Russia. She knows their laws. She knew not to be taking her THC oil with her because they consider that a drug and it's illegal in Russia, in Moscow. She knew better. She packed it anyway. Now, do I think that's stupid to detain somebody for having some THC oil? Absolutely. That is dumb. But that's their country and that is their laws, and I thought we were supposed to respect other people's cultures. And at the same time, you have this administration fighting for strict gun laws, and they released a merchant of death who is all about giving guns to all kinds of people. Okay, my next one, we are just going to solely focus on the history of Victor Boot, the merchant of death, so we can see how ridiculous the fact that we let him go is. And I understand Trump had the opportunity to trade Whelan to get him home for this man, but he understood the danger of doing that swap, and he didn't do it. And I think sometimes going in the military, I think you understand that sometimes you may become a prisoner of war, and there are times that we can't give certain things that they're asking for because it would endanger the country. And you know that going in as a soldier. I think you know that. But let's talk a little bit about Paul Whelan and what happened to him. So Paul Whelan, 52, is a U.S. citizen who's been detained in Russia on espionage charges for the past 4 years. Whelan, a former U.S. Marine, also has citizenship in Ireland, Britain, and Canada. He worked in law enforcement before and after his military service. At the time of his arrest, Whelan was working as the director of global security for Borg Warner, an auto parts supplier based in Michigan. Whelan served in the Marine Corps Reserve from 1994 to 2008. While serving in the Marines, he did 2 deployments to Iraq and rose to the rank of staff sergeant. He worked as an administrative clerk-in-chief before being discharged in 2008 for bad conduct. The Marine Corps found him guilty of multiple charges, including attempting to steal $10,000 from the U.S. government while deployed to Iraq in 2006, according to records obtained by the Washington Post. Whelan's family says he first visited Russia while stationed in Iraq and returned to visit the country often over the past few years. Several of Whelan's Russian acquaintances described him as a friendly man with a great appreciation for Russia and a basic command of their language, per the Post. In an op-ed for the Post, Paul's twin brother, David Whelan, described him as a, quote, kind and considerate brother, son, and uncle, and a generous and loyal friend. Whelan's family has maintained his innocence since the beginning of his ordeal. When Whelan was arrested by Russia's Federal Security Service at a Moscow hotel on December 28, 2018, the FSB claimed he was carrying out, quote, an espionage operation, which resulted in his arrest. Whelan's brother David said Whelan was in Moscow for the wedding of a fellow Marine. The morning of the wedding, Whelan gave a tour of the Kremlin, but they stopped hearing from him before the ceremony. He was arrested after allegedly receiving a USB drive containing quote-unquote state secrets while in Moscow. Whelan said he thought the drive held an acquaintance's vacation photos. The FSB did not confirm that Whelan was in their custody until days after his arrest. John Huntsman, the U.S. ambassador to Russia at the time, was able to visit Whelan in detention nearly a week after his initial arrest. A U.S. government representative was supposed to have been able to see him within 72 hours of his arrest, but the meeting was delayed. Whelan's arrest came weeks after accused Russian spy Maria Butina pleaded guilty in U.S. federal court to charges of influencing U.S. relations with Russia before and after the 2016 presidential election. Some people have speculated that Whelan's arrest might have been in retaliation for Butina's conviction. Samantha Vinograd, a national security analyst who served on former President Obama's National Security Council, told CNN, quote, Putin certainly likes to take what he calls reciprocal measures, and in this case, ostensibly he would want to have some kind of bargaining chip if he chooses to try to negotiate for Maria Butina's release. In 2020, Whelan was convicted of espionage charges and sentenced to 16 years in a Russian prison. He was originally held in Correctional Colony Number 18 in the Mordovia region shortly after his conviction. He was later moved to high-security prison IK-17, also in Mordovia, but located an 8 hours drive southeast of Moscow. U.S. officials considered Whelan a political prisoner and insist they have been diligent in trying to negotiate his release, but so far nothing has panned out. Considering the fact that the White House has successfully secured the release of 2 other prisoners this year, many are asking why Whelan keeps getting left behind. Quote, "I was arrested for a crime that never occurred. I don't understand why I'm still sitting here." In April 2022, the U.S. was able to secure the release of Trevor Reed, another former Marine who was serving 9 years of assaulting a Russian police officer. Russia released Reed in exchange for U.S. release of convicted Russian drug trafficker Konstantin Yoroshenko. Quote, "We won't stop until Paul Whelan and others join Trevor in the loving arms of family and friends," Biden promised at this time. In July, Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced that the U.S. had submitted a proposal to Russian authorities for WNBA player Brittany Griner and Whelan's joint release. The proposal included a proposed swap for convicted Russian arms dealer Viktor Bout, who was serving a 25-year sentence in the U.S. However, the Russians rejected that proposal, leaving the White House to continue negotiations over the past 5 months. On Thursday, the U.S. announced they had reached an agreement to secure Griner's release, but they could not do the same for Whelan. Biden said, quote, "This was not a choice of which Americans to bring home. Sadly, for totally illegitimate reasons, Russia is treating Paul's case differently than Brittany's. Whelan was told that because he was accused of spying on Russia, they put me at a level higher than what they did with Trevor Reed and Brittany, per his statement on CNN." You notice how Biden's words and Karen Jean Pierre's were exactly the same? Though heartbroken, the Whelan family said they were prepared for the news that negotiations to release him failed. In a statement emailed to the media, Whelan's brother said, quote, "The Biden admin made the right decision to bring Miss Griner home and to make the deal that was possible rather than waiting for one that wasn't going to happen," end quote. Other people did not act as well to the news that Whelan would remain in prison. Some members of Congress expressed their disappointment in the Biden admin because Whelan was left out of another prisoner swap. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy called the trade for Bout a gift to Vladimir Putin and admonished Biden for endangering American lives. He also added, "Leaving Paul Whelan behind for this is unconscionable." Similarly, Senator Rick Scott of Florida tweeted, "I'm glad Brittany is coming home, but what about U.S. Marine vet Paul Whelan? He's still held by Putin in Russia. For Biden to give Putin a dangerous arms dealer, someone known as the Merchant of Death, is weak and disgusting. Doing so while leaving Paul behind is unforgivable." Amid the criticism, some defended Biden, highlighting that the president is still working on getting Whelan home. Doubtful. Former Mike Pence aide Olivia Troy wrote, quote, "The Whelan family has been gracious in their understanding of this, and as Americans, we should be united in calling out Putin rather than attacking our own president." Oh, shut up. While he said he was happy for Griner, Whelan remains, quote, "greatly disappointed that more has not been done to secure my release. He was led to believe that things were moving in the right direction and that the governments were negotiating and that something would happen fairly soon." And there's also his Russian lawyer came out with some evidence that it was either Paul Whelan, Brittany Griner, or no one type of deal as well. So it's really sad, and I pray that we can eventually get him home soon. I really, really do. Well, that's all I wanted to talk about. Like I said, go check out the interview with Elijah Schaffer and Lara Logan. And also, I'll do the Project Veritas video in the description as well. And I hope you enjoyed this video. And don't forget, you can go to my link tree, and that'll take you to my social media. I'm more active on Twitter than I am anywhere else. And I hope that you like and share these videos and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can also find me on Rumble. And I hope you have a good rest of your day, and God bless.